welcome back to another Renae's recap. I'm Tanisha's Renae, and today we are recapping the last 2 weeks of school. And so let me double check the dates because I'm recording this hecka late. And so we are recapping from February 23rd through February 6th. And so what I'm going to do is just kind of touch on the highlights of this week, or these 2 weeks, because these were probably like the most normal 2 weeks for me. And yeah, that's basically what we're gonna do. I'm not really sure why my background looks so dark, but I mean, I don't know, I kind of like it. So first was February 24th. I had my diversity research proposal presentation. It was on socioeconomic status, proximity to disadvantage, and social emotional skills in children. And it's kind of like a fake research project where you get unlimited amount of money and then you get to research what you want. And something that I'm interested in moving into is looking at proximity disadvantage. And so I'm not sure exactly how much people know about proximity disadvantage. It's just now it moved from like being in economics to being more in psychology these days. And so basically it's about like how close you are to disadvantage. So for some people, especially Black people, due to historical mistreatment and in multiple spheres, like you're closer to being in poverty. Like you might live in a disadvantaged neighborhood, or you might know somebody who lives in a disadvantaged neighborhood, and so you're so much closer, like you're just like one step from being disadvantaged, if that makes sense. So I did that presentation. I felt like it went a little iffy, but a lot of people in my class were saying that like that seemed to be one of my most comfortable presentations. So I mean, that felt good. I mean, I'm not a really, okay, so I like to say that I'm not a strong presenter because I don't feel very strong about it, but on my like student evaluations and like my peers say that I'm like a really good presenter. So I don't really know, I can't really tell you, but it went really well. And then the rest of the week was pretty normal, my normal classes, normal external placements, pretty normal things going on. And so then by the end of the week, it was SLU interviews. This year, I felt like we didn't have nearly as many people interviewing, but also the weather was kind of weird, like not necessarily in St. Louis, but just around the country. So yeah, SLU interviews to get into the clinical program. They're always really fun. They're always like socially exhausting though too. And so I had a great time. I really love interview season. I think it's the greatest. I like being on the other side. Like when I was interviewing, didn't like it, but I like being on the other side of interview season. And I got to meet some great students. There's some of you that subscribe to the channel to watch the day in the life video, and so that's really cool. And yeah, so then that brings us to the next week, and that was midterms week. And so at the beginning of the week, we had 3 really big assignments to do: a diversity research proposal, which is basically like the paper to go with the presentation I did the week before. And then I had a case conceptualization due for my clinical child class, and I had a biopsychosocial paper due for my clinical health class. And so Monday, the case conceptualization was due. I worked on it pretty much the whole weekend. It went pretty well. So we got to do it on a case that we already know, and so since I know my case pretty thoroughly, it was pretty simple to do. And then the diversity paper was due that Wednesday, but on that Monday she moved it till after spring break if we needed extra time. And so definitely took the extra time because my diversity or my biopsychosocial paper was due on Thursday. And so I felt like I did those papers probably the most in advance that I've ever done a paper, if that makes sense. Like normally I wait till the night before to start doing papers, and I didn't do that this round. So, you know, pat on the back to me because I'm normally one of those people. And yeah, it went really well. So then on Thursday was like our job fair. It's called a job fair, but it's really like external placements fair where people will present about the external placements that they are at. and just so that other people can get the information about the external placements. And then basically, after the presentation part, we meet and mingle with our peers and ask about different experiences at the external placements. I wrote a list because I knew I was going to remember everything. And so this is basically just so that we can get a better idea of where we want to apply next year, or apply towards the end of this year for external placements next year. And so I'm really considering like 3 different places. There is a assessment kid place where it's basically you're just doing like cranking out a bunch of assessments for kids, and that's basically it. There's an assessment place. There is an autism center where it's basically all assessment too, but it's specific to autism, which is really interesting to me. And then there's another place that's more, it's kind of like integrated healthcare, but kind of not. It's kind of like integrated healthcare, but it's kind of not, because it just kind of exists side by side with the doctor. But it's like that kind of place. It's like a huge healthcare network where I will get therapy. I would hope to get some assessment, because that's really what I'm looking for these days, a lot more assessment experience. And so then that brings us to Friday. Wow, that's weird. So it's raining, sorry, it's raining, but one of those like snow trucks just drove by, like with the trucks with the like shovel on the front, but it hasn't snowed in weeks, so I don't know what he's doing. Anyways, and so then on Friday, I had another shadowing experience. And so I think I talked about this in the video where I talked about children's, but basically I wanted to get 2 shadowing experiences through my clinical health class. We only were really required to do 1, but I wanted to see the 2 different course kind of settings. So the place I went to on Friday was a fully integrated behavioral health care system. The person I shadowed was all adult, but they do have child people there. And so basically there are like 3 ways that you can see the behavioral health consultant. So there's one way, it's kind of like traditional therapy where you can go in, set an appointment and see the doctor, or see the psychologist, not like doctor, but psychologist. And then there's also, you can look through the schedule and see if people are on there that you're like, I probably should follow up with. And then there's also, you can see people if the doctor is like, hey, this person needs to see behavioral health. And that's basically how you see people. And so that day I got to see like 1 of each appointment, which was really cool. It was kind of like student teaching, and there was like a range of issues. So like some depression, some end of life stuff, some potential depression and grief counseling, and some just psycho ed about pregnancy and like maintaining lower stress levels for your baby, and trying to think what else we talked about. Oh, and just like barriers to care, and like providing access and resources to this woman about her pregnancy was really cool. And yeah, that's basically all the highlights for those 2 weeks. And so I was going to record these separately, but then I kind of forgot to record. So yeah, so that's basically the last 2 weeks. And so then the next recap will be about my spring break. And I'll talk about that all there. If you have watched this far, leave a, I should have thought of this before. Leave a blue emoji. And if you're not following me over on my Instagram, you should definitely do that. And I will, oh, and if you're not subscribed, I was trying to think what else I normally say. Sometimes I forget. And if you are not subscribed already, please consider subscribing to my channel. I talk about grad school, I talk about clinical psychology, I talk about just life things in general. And that's pretty much it. And we hit our goal of only being 10-minute long recap. So I will see you guys next week. Peace out, and I love you all so much. Goodbye.